Welcome into another edition of Talkin Ducks. Oregon dismantling Hawaii. We'll quickly break down that game, but a huge matchup at Autzen Stadium. It's prime time. Coming to Eugene, we'll let you know what the Ducks need to do on both sides of the ball and what a win in this game would mean for Oregon moving forward. Then we'll also take a closer look at this stacked Pac-12 and let you know whether or not we still feel Oregon has got a legitimate chance to play in the Pac-12 title game or if there's a dark horse in the conference. But let's go ahead and get to our opening drive, brought to you by Capital Toyota, your way on the highway. And let's hear from Dan Lanning as far as the one thing that's still bothering him despite the impressive win over Hawaii.
Yeah, we better not be talking about it next week.
How do you address that this week? Is it something different, or is it just drilling?
Well, I'm not going to do the same thing again and again and expect the different results. So we're going to do something different, right? And we're going to figure out if we can get it fixed, right? And if we can't, then they can't be on the field. If you're going to get penalties, you can't be on the field, right? And that's going to be that simple, right? If you get a penalty, you can't play for us. You're hurting the team.
And with that, we bring in the crew, Joey Harrington, Anthony Newman, and Aaron Fentress from the Oregonian. And Joey, let's begin with you for the Ducks. You're a top 10 team. You're 3-0. You're getting set to take on Colorado. But this Hawaii game, you heard it from Lanning. You saw 9 penalties still. And you look at the things you try to clean up in non-conference play. This feels like this has been a sticking point, especially when you look at the 14 penalties in the previous game against Texas Tech.
It's the reason that... It's the reason the Texas Tech game was close, and it was I don't want to say the sore thumb of the Hawaii game, but yeah, if this becomes a pattern, it's going to be a problem. I mean, this was the reason they didn't run the ball well against Texas Tech. You keep putting yourself behind the chains. You start playing good teams, and those are the kind of things that are going to come back to bite you. When was it? Like 3 years ago? There was a stretch, there was a year there where Oregon was consistently shooting themselves in the foot, and it bit them. I mean, it ended up costing them a game or two. So this is the type of thing that needs to get cleaned up now. You would have hoped it would get cleaned up last week, but hey, you got your first real test of the year, so you better get it cleaned up real quick.
Yeah, and Aaron, to Joey's point, this is something where you can't give this type of margin to a Caleb Williams, to a Michael Penix. It's fine against Hawaii. You saw how close things were against Texas Tech, but it feels like this discipline aspect, whatever it may be, whether it's a particular group or just guys making sure they take care of their assignments, it's got to get cleaned up if Oregon wants to accomplish what they feel they can accomplish this season.
You know, one thing I think a lot of people probably don't remember is that during the Chip Kelly era, there were some years where they led the conference in total penalties, but they were running a massive amount of plays per game, right? And they were eventually wearing teams down in boat racing teams, so it didn't matter. And so it's just accepted part of the formula of what they were doing. Well, this team obviously has played a lot of close games against good competition dating back to last season. So Lanning knows with the schedule coming up that at some point they're going to screw themselves with penalties and it's going to cost them a game. It hasn't yet, because they haven't really played anyone other than one.
It almost did last week, Aaron. It almost did last week.
Texas Tech, they played with a decent team, and that game was probably closer than it should have been because of penalties. So now when you play better teams, it's absolutely going to cost you a game, and he knows it, and that's why he's fired up about it. And he's correct. Here's the other thing, too. Usually when teams get penalties, it's because guys are trying to get some kind of edge, or they're not thinking because they're facing a really good opponent, and it costs them a little bit of their focus. But come on, Hawaii, you pushed Hawaii all over the place. There was no reason for anyone to not be able to remain disciplined in that game because of their opponent, and yet still you saw a lot of ridiculous penalties. So that's why Lanning's fired up, and rightfully so.
And Jordan, let me jump in here too. I think the thing that has me a little bit concerned is they started pretty clean in that game against Hawaii. Like, they were rolling. Right? And then it was almost like they kind of took the foot off the accelerator and just kind of let it, like, all right, we'll just kind of coast into it. You're not going to be able to coast the next 8 weeks. There's going to be no coasting. This is going to be focus, focus, focus from start to finish. Right? So as a head coach, you want to see your team be able to put together that whole stretch. And I think that's probably the concerning part right now is they had it going and then it disappeared, right? And they got back onto that penalty train, which, again, we keep hitting that point. If you do that against Caleb Williams, Michael Penix, Shedeur Sanders, it's going to bite you.
You know, Anthony, you've played on a variety of teams, especially in the NFL. Teams that were really, really good and teams that, well, frankly, maybe stunk. You know the difference between those teams, especially at the NFL level. Enlighten us as to why these penalties are such a big deal. The average fan may look at it and think, hey, whatever, they beat them by 50, 60 plus, but why is this such a big deal if Oregon wants to be one of those playoff teams this year, from your experience on the field as a player yourself?
Well, I think it's a lack of focus with the players. And I love Dan Lanning's attitude. If you start getting penalties for us, you don't play anymore. You know, you're not going to run stadium stairs. You're not going to do gassers back and forth. Kids get through that stuff. I'm going to take time away from you. You're going to stand on the sideline next to me and not play in the game because it's a lack of focus. And there's two types of penalties: the personal fouls, which are, you know, silly. I mean, come on. You're trying to get that extra edge, and now it's about you and not the team. And then just the regular penalties when you know, you're not getting in the right spot because you're lazy. Your footwork's not right. So now you're reaching and you grab somebody. You're panicking as a defensive back, and you're not trusting your technique. So that's a lack of focus, and that's what's happening. And you guys are right. Against a good football team, you're going to get beat because you're trying to beat another team, yet you're beating yourself. You can't win that way.
Yeah, don't forget the Super Bowl this year was decided by a penalty late in that game, so something to keep in mind, of course. Well, we'll see if Oregon can clean things up as they get set for Colorado, but the good news is they get through the non-conference slate 3-0. You do what you're supposed to do. Now the real fun begins, and when we come back on Talkin Ducks, we'll begin the discussions about Colorado, just how important this game is. Now that Prime is here, all the hype around Colorado, what it means for Oregon and Dan Lanning. We're just getting started. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. You're watching Talkin Ducks, built by Par Lumber.
Just given the way that Deion's used a lot of bulletin board material, do you regret at all what you said at Oregon Media Day back in August?
Can I just get your initial reaction when you heard about the news of Colorado leaving? And does these changes change the approach or your attitude as far as the coming this season?
Not a big reaction. I mean, I'm trying to remember what they won to affect this conference. I don't remember. Do you remember them winning anything? I don't remember them winning anything. No, I don't regret anything that I've said, you know, for this program. At the end of the day, obviously, I wasn't talking about Deion's team. I'm talking about the past and the future for our team. But if that serves as material for them, great, right? I don't think it's going to have any bearing on the game and the success of the game.
Oregon's head coach has spoken about Colorado a few times in the past. Is it personal once again this week?
I respect the heck out of this man, what he's accomplished, stepping in, taking over a program, and keeping it not only rocking steady, but accelerating it. So I'm not a fan of anybody. I mean, except for, you know, some of the celebrities that got a tremendous gift, but not in sports. I respect the heck out of him. I love what he's accomplishing. I love who he is, the way he runs his team. I love the way he operates. So I've got a lot of respect for him.
Time now for our legendary moment, brought to you by Abby's Legendary Pizza. And that was Dan Lanning earlier at Pac-12 Media Day. And then, of course, you've got Deion Sanders on Tuesday addressing the media. And a rarity in the world of college football and fandom here, Aaron. Two people having a civil conversation with a lot of logic involved afterwards. Clearly, Lanning wasn't talking about this year's Deion Sanders-led Colorado team having not won anything. It was history. The numbers are there to prove it. There's no bulletin board material being used from Lanning's comments, as much as everyone would like to wish that was something that would galvanize Colorado, like we saw last week from Colorado State. What do you make of these comments as far as how they interpreted things back and forth?
Well, yeah, Lanning didn't say anything specifically about Deion, but he was throwing shade at the entire Colorado program, basically saying they were irrelevant moving forward, so it didn't matter that they left. So that's what he was saying. Now, he said they didn't do anything to impact the conference. Well, that's just not true. They won the South in 2016 and played in the conference title game, which Dan Lanning has yet to do. So it was just unnecessary. Was it a huge deal? No, I said this back then, but it was unnecessary shade to throw, especially since your program is about to ditch the conference as well. So it just didn't make any sense. That said, Deion is smart to play it this way because he just proved last week that Colorado ain't really about taking things personal, because they said they took that game personal against Colorado State and almost lost at home. So if I'm him and I lost Travis Hunter for the next few weeks, I'm going into Oregon and I know I'm going to play the best team I've played so far, I would probably leave the shenanigans behind. That all said, I think both men handled it perfectly moving forward. It has put a complete wet blanket on all my excitement for this game, though, in all sorts of different directions, but they handled it well. Much to my chagrin.
Ventures was stirring the pot there. I was like, oh, God, we're going. And then he just like put it all out. Yeah, I don't even know what he said. I would just kind of, you get to that phase, Anthony, where you just hear the tone of Aaron's voice, but you don't actually hear the words that he's saying.
Charlie
it was just
Brown.
like, wow. So Jordan, I don't really have anything to respond to, so we could just, I don't know what he said.
Yeah, let's just move along here.
Yeah.
All right, the importance of this game then, Joey. Dan Lanning, in his short year and a quarter here at Oregon, done a phenomenal job. Obviously warranted the contract extension. Has there been a win, though, that's really drawn the attention of the nation? You're going to have a lot of eyeballs on this game, of course, because it's Colorado, but how important is this game for Oregon, for Lanning, to set the stage with conference play beginning this week?
This is really, you want to call it his first big test? I mean, I'm trying to think. I mean, obviously, Georgia was a massive one right out of the gates. But, I mean, I don't know that anybody truly expected a first-year head coach to go in and beat the defending national champion. This is an opportunity to put into practice what you've been building, right? You've spent a year putting in your philosophy, you building your program, recruiting your players, and now you've got an opportunity to do something that the entire country will see. Right? That's why we brought Dan Lanning in, right? Because he can recruit, because he can, because he's a national presence, because he keeps us visible, to all the recruits and pundits around the country. This is your first chance. Now, not to say that if Oregon doesn't win this game, they can't end up, going and beating SC or Washington and getting themselves back there. But this would be a huge first step for what Dan is trying to do in terms of building this program to the, we brought him in because he won a national championship at Georgia. Georgia doesn't lose these games. Right? That's the reality of it. We brought Dan in because of what he did at Georgia, hoping that he could replicate that type of defense and that type of program here. Georgia doesn't lose these games.
Anthony.
Well, I'm a true believer that during the season, every game is just as important. There's not one more important than the other.
Are you saying this is just as important as Hawaii and Portland State?
Well, no, but think about this for a minute, okay? There's only two games that are really, really important. If you make it to the national championship, you got to win that game. If you make it to the conference championship, you got to win that game. But at the same time, you're getting up for the Buffaloes, okay? And then you have Stanford after that at third place. Well, you better beat Stanford. Don't beat the Buffaloes and then lose to Stanford. So every game during the season is important.
That was Chip Kelly's mentality.
What's that?
That was Chip Kelly's mentality.
That wasn't the question.
If I treat USC differently than I treat the team I'm supposed to beat,
correct,
that's how I'm going to lose to the team I'm supposed to beat.
No, but here, hold on. Let me jump in. So that wasn't Jordan's question, though. Right? The question was about Dan and building this program and how he's viewed nationally and doing it against Colorado, right? Because you can win as many games as you want. You can win and win and win. But if nobody sees it, if the recruits don't pay attention, if nobody, the tree falls in the forest, does anybody hear it? No, I'm trying to think, pick a Wisconsin who just goes out and wins 8, 9, 10 games every year, but they're completely irrelevant, right? This is an opportunity for the country to see what Dan Lanning is building here. So yes, your point is right. If you beat Colorado and lose to Stanford, it doesn't matter. But this is an opportunity. This is the country's team right now. This is the country's baby. Dion
more than the country's team, Joey.
What's that?
It's more than the country's team.
I mean, this 9.3 million people watched Colorado State last week. Never in the history of Colorado State have 9 million people watch the game. The country will be paying attention. The country will have an opportunity to see what Dan Lanning is doing at Oregon. So I think there is more importance in terms of how Oregon is viewed nationally. Yeah, it doesn't, if you beat Colorado and lose to Stanford, it doesn't matter. But I think there is a perceived importance on this game that could go a long way in terms of how we're viewed by national rankings, how we're viewed by recruits who want to come in down the road. That's the reality of it.
I think the hype is a guy who is not playing. That's the hype.
Oh, sure.
That's the hype. The guy sitting on the sideline with a bad toe. Come on. So, I mean, I'm just saying, you still got two football teams that have to play on the field.
His flesh and blood is out there on both sides of the ball as well, too. But Aaron, think about this for a second. West Coast schools, let's say west of the Rockies. Outside of SC, what's the other cool brand name school that a kid is maybe thinking of going to that for the last 20 years the university has fought to put themselves in that position?
Oregon.
What school in the West now are kids keeping their eyeballs on now to go to outside of SC as far as a cool school to go to or a place that's unique and different?
Fresno State.
Oh,
Colorado. Sorry, you meant
done.
Colorado. My bad.
So is this not a huge game?
I honestly, I've never gotten caught up in the whole one game is going to tip the scales for recruits or things like that. I just don't know if that necessarily resonates. I think Colorado's still a 6-6 team. Like, I bumped them from 4 to 5 wins to 6 after they beat TCU. But I think when it's all said and done, all the early hype is going to fizzle away because I think they're going down this week. They're going down to SC. They're going down So I think at the end of the day,
people want to play
this
for
is the
Prime.
game.
Wait until he gets those dogs on the line.
What's that?
He will get some kids that want to go to the SEC that have the size that want to go play for Prime. It's only a matter of time.
They're not going to make their decision off this game, is what I'm saying.
No, not this game necessarily, but every 4 or 5 star kid that might be visiting Oregon, then visiting Colorado. Oh, Oregon beat Colorado by 15, 20, or look at it. I'm just saying, there is an impact there, in my opinion.
Maybe,
and I feel like if you're Oregon, you have to outpace almost the cool factor of Colorado by getting this victory here and putting a lid on some of this.
But Oregon lost to Oregon State and still crushed them in recruiting. Like I just don't think it matters as much as we're saying. That's all.
But Oregon State has no national visibility. That's the point. Oregon State has no national visibility. Nobody around the country cares about Oregon State. This is a unique game in the fact that Colorado has been built up 100%. Well, not 100%. Because they've got a heck of a quarterback and some other really good players. But Dion, like you said, with his bad toe, is sitting on the sideline. He's the one who's brought the visibility. So there are extra eyeballs on this game in a way that there wouldn't be.
But to Newman's point,
Oregon
beat Ohio State. And everyone acted like it was the greatest win ever. We argued about this. We're like, it's a regular season game. And then a couple weeks later, they lost to Stanford. And all of a sudden, that game didn't matter. And then more weeks later, they got trounced twice by Utah. Now, did Oregon go out and massively recruit off of that Ohio State game? No, because no one cared about it anymore. That's all we're trying to say is that, yeah, there's some hype around it, and Dion and Primetime, whom I love, they said it's great. If they go out there and beat them, but at the end of the season, Colorado's 6-6, it's not going to matter as much. I don't think there's going to be one recruit out there who's going to say, I'm going to go to Colorado if they win, or I'm going to go to Oregon if they win. I think at the end of the day, it's much ado about nothing other than the hype.
I agree.
I would just argue this.
Go.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Anthony.
In 2 years, Prime is going to be gone. I'm telling you that now. He don't want to stay there in Boulder. He's out. He's going back down south. He's going to Florida State. So, all those big boys.
Florida State's winning though. They're winning though. They're not going to get rid of their coach.
All
You
those
want to
big
stir
boys.
the pot, Anthony.
Listen, all those big boys.
Joe, you got that pot still?
All those big boys he's getting from the south. They're leaving too.
They're going to leave too,
back
right?
south with them.
Hey, all right.
Okay, raising
It's
my
going to be
hand.
fascinating
Just
either way. I'm
wanna
sure
put
we
a-
won't see the impact of this game for a couple of years. But stick around, plenty more Talkin Ducks when we come back. We'll take a closer look. Obviously, Travis Hunter being out for Colorado, that's a big deal. We'll talk more about X's and O's and what the Ducks need to do on the field to get this win. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Talkin Ducks, built by Par Lumber. Welcome back to Talkin Ducks, and as Oregon gets set for Colorado, a little bit of shine has been taken off this matchup because Travis Hunter out for the next 3 weeks, a lacerated liver, ouch, something nobody ever wants to deal with. But you saw that hit, guys, we all saw it early in that game with Travis Hunter. How disappointing is it that he's not playing in this game, and what were your thoughts on that hit? Because Aaron, you seem to think it really wasn't that cheap of a shot or anything.
Yeah, it was definitely a late hit. It was uncalled for, but it was pretty bang. The ball hits the ground. He hits him right away, like within a second. He didn't lay him out. Like, he just kind of put a shoulder into him. It was just to bump him. Had he wanted to destroy Travis Hunter, he could have given him an Anthony Newman hit, which we've seen back in the day, and just laid him out, but he didn't. So it's unfortunate that Hunter was injured. I just don't think it was a very malicious hit. Penalty, yes. Not as malicious as people have made it out to be. People are calling for a scholarship. Like, people, have they never watched football before? I mean, if you got your scholarship taken away for that, half the country on defense wouldn't have scholarships anymore, because we've seen way worse than that. So that's my feelings on it. But the fact that he's out for this game, I'm so bummed by what this game has become. The fact that they almost lost Colorado State, the fact that they're missing their version of Deion Sanders, basically a two-way dominant player, just destroys this game for me in a lot of different ways. Very disappointing.
Aaron, real quick. Aaron, you're saying that all these crazy people are tuning in, like, and commenting, like, who don't know anything about football. It's almost like Colorado has brought like 9 million people, all these new viewers to college football, and they're all paying attention to this game now. Is that what you're saying, that everybody's watching now? And so I don't know. Go ahead, Anthony. I never tackled anybody, so you can go ahead and follow that.
Wait, you didn't have 5 chances to tackle someone against Oregon State that one year, Joey?
Oh, I had lots of lots of chances. Yeah, I took Brian Urlacher out once.
Damn.
He was coming at me after Mike Brown got a pick. Urlacher was leading the charge up the sideline. I said, screw this, and I just had to go low, and I got a 15-yard penalty because I stood no chance. It was self-preservation at that point. I just ate the 15 yards. Go ahead.
Oh, well, anyway, you know, guys, that game was chippy before it started. So you knew something was going to happen. And you're right, Aaron's right, the safety didn't leave his feet into Travis Hunter. I mean, he could have blew him up. So that hit was, it was all right, and as Duck football players and us competitors, you want to compete against the best. So you want all the guys healthy. You want to go against Travis Hunter. So now you're upset as a player because he's not going to play. It does give you a little bit of an advantage because he's a stud. He's a dude. He's a dude on both sides of the ball. But with that being said, you want him to play. You want him to be out there so you can go against him and see how good you are. And it's kind of sad.
Yeah, it's a great point you make. Let's go ahead and hear Dan Lanning, his thoughts on the Travis Hunter injury, what that means for Colorado, and then facing Shedeur Sanders as well, too.
Yeah, he's a special player. I absolutely hate that for Travis. He's a dynamic kid. He's got a special personality and obviously is tremendous on the football field, and he certainly gave them an edge. So I hope he gets healthy soon. I hate not to get to see him play in this game because, he's meant for a stage like this, the stage that we're going to have this Saturday.
What's made Sanders such a good quarterback transferring from the FCS level to this level?
I think he always keeps his eyes downfield and looking for opportunities to find open receivers, and that's something his wideouts have done a great job of. When he's had several scramble opportunities, but I would describe him as a guy that scrambles to throw, not necessarily scramble to run. But when he has to run with his feet, he can. He's extended plays, and when you extend plays, it's hard to cover for a long time, right? So we have to do a good job of not allowing him to extend plays, but also make sure that we plaster guys in the back end when he does.
All right, time now for Talkin' Numbers, brought to you by Par Lumber. And Joey, you're the quarterback here of this group. You look at Shedeur Sanders, and it's pretty remarkable what he's been doing. And obviously hopped on the map with that 500-plus yard performance against TCU. What do you see from him as a quarterback that makes him so special right now? Because clearly he's the engine that's been driving this Colorado offense over the last 3 weeks.
His decision-making has been pretty much flawless up to this point. When you have a guy like Travis Hunter go out, a lot of quarterbacks would panic. Where's my security blanket? I'm going to either get really, really conservative or force balls into situations where they shouldn't go in an effort to try and generate some sort of play. And you saw just the opposite from him. He continued to just surgically operate the offense. Now, some of the big plays were missing because Travis was missing, but he kept them in the game to the point where on the last drive, you're on your own 2-yard line. He said, "Get on my shoulders because we're going down the field." And he took him 98. And that's what a great quarterback does. His decision-making from start to finish, whether he's surrounded by the best players or not, whether he's protected or not. I mean, that's the thing that I think is going to be the one advantage for Oregon is that offensive line for Colorado. They are last in the conference in sacks allowed. They've allowed Shedeur Sanders to be sacked 16 times. Oregon's given up 1 sack against Bo. Like that's, you put a quarterback in that situation. How many examples do we have? Daniel Jones, Zach Wilson, like go down all those NFL quarterbacks that have been on the run, have been pressured. What do? They just check it up. Not Sanders. His decision making under every situation has been absolutely impeccable, and that's the best thing you could say about a quarterback.
Yeah, Anthony, how do you deal with him then? Because obviously this is quickly emerging as one of the better quarterbacks in a loaded Pac-12 and a Heisman Trophy candidate potentially. How do you deal with a quarterback that Joey says has been flawless with his decision making when you're on the defensive side of things?
Well, he's the natural at the quarterback position. I mean, it looked like the game has slowed down for him. He looked like he's been playing, or he's been a senior for the last 3 years, playing in this offense. He looks good. He really does. And the hard thing about going against him is that he can run and he can scramble, but he wants to scramble to buy time to throw the ball down the field and allow the receivers to get open. And the receivers understand, hey, he's scrambling. Let's do our scramble rules, get to the sideline or, head towards the end zone. They're in tune with that. And that's kind of crazy because, this team, they got 70 new players. They haven't been together for a long time. So to watch him play, and he's the captain of the ship. He's running the show, and he has some weapons around him. Just like Joey said, though, the weakness is the offensive line. The weakness also is the running game. There is no running game. So, when you go into a game and you're playing a team that's really good, you need to have balance. And if you don't have balance, then the other team's going to tee off and come after you. So this game should be interesting.
Aaron, you've done some coaching. What do you do against this Colorado offense now you've had a chance to see them for 3 weeks and they're out arguably their best receiver?
Wait, who did you coach? Who are you coaching?
Arena League.
Oh,
no,
please.
No.
What was it?
I coached punters.
Semi-pro.
What?
Semi-pro.
Yeah,
that's what it was.
Yeah.
Semi-pro punters.
So yeah. Okay. So Newman, correct me if I'm wrong. When you're a defensive back and the coverage is sound and the quarterback doesn't throw it on time, you feel pretty good until you see that helmet bounce out into the open space, right?
Correct.
And if that guy has the ability to run, even just the ability to dance around and get more time, which is what Vernon Adams used to do to people, right? And he can sling it anywhere, that's when you wet yourself. Now, maybe that's exaggeration, but that's when you're like, oh no. So I guarantee you, Dan Lanning this week is like, we have to keep him in the pocket and let our athletes squeeze him and not let him escape because he's the master of playground football.
Yes.
Because he, like Joey said, he doesn't make stupid throws at any point, especially when he's out on the perimeter. So what do you do with him? He's going to carve you up. So to me, when you have a team that can't run, they have 56 yards rushing per game. So you're not worried about that. If they run, please hand off all day long. I want to widen my splits with my linemen and my backers, and I want to be able to keep him in the pocket. Don't attack where he is, attack outside of him so when he bounces, he has to go further around you to get around you and make him throw from the pocket. If he beats you from there like a Tom Brady or a Peyton Manning, but don't let that guy get out and shred you with his feet and his arm on the run. Then it's going to be a long day.
Last question real quick, Aaron. Do you put a spy on him for most of the game?
Hey, I put like 9 spies on that man. Are you kidding me? Like I said, you don't care about the run.
Drop
you
2 and spy 9.
You don't care about the run. I'm having a double spy. So no matter where he goes, I'm able to squeeze him and force him to give it up. Because if I can get a guy into his face when he goes to throw out of the pocket, then maybe I can force a bad throw. It floats a little bit. I hit him. I get some hits on him. To me, that's the entire game plan. Run game, worthless. Don't even worry about it.
All right, well, we can't wait to watch the game film after this one. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we will catch up with Dan Rubenstein from the Solid Verbal. He'll let us know his thoughts on this matchup against Colorado and also some other spicy matchups in the Pac-12 when we come back. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Talkin Ducks, built by Par Lumber. Welcome back. Our good friend of the show, Dan Rubenstein, now joins us from the Solid Verbal. And Dan, a lot to get to as we get set for conference play here in the Pac-12. And for Oregon, they make it into the top 10, but Dan, I'm trying to put my finger on this. Is this because Oregon is playing like a top 10 team right now, or they just haven't stubbed their toe like some of the other teams ahead of them? And on top of that, do you feel like this defense that Oregon has this season is enough to put them in that echelon of the top 10, or is there something else that you feel like they need to iron out?
So all of the above. My answer to that is yes to everything you said. There's a lot to still iron out. Yes, there's a lot. Some of the run fits haven't been incredible, and some of the penalties, of course, have been something that Dan Lanning has emphasized that, hey, this needs to be worked on immediately, and this is a pressing issue. But what is a top 10 team in week 4, right? Like, it's a team that has won. It's a team that was close enough to the top 10 or started the season in the top 10. And almost nobody in the Pac-12 has played a conference game. So what we're talking about right now is, yes, Oregon is top 10-ish. The defense is clearly improved. I think the secondary probably had its best game in a long time when you look at what they did against Hawaii, who wanted to do nothing but pass last week, and the pass rush got home. Obviously, Brandon Dorlus was there. Kyrie Jackson has emerged at cornerback, and there was nothing easy in the passing game for the Warriors. So there are elements of this defense when you look at the passing game, when you look at the secondary, they 100% improved based on what we could have seen a couple weeks in. Did they get in front of a 6'9" tight end in Lubbock every play? No, they did not. And there were still things to work on when it comes to the defense and the discipline against Texas Tech. But when you look at the greater landscape of the sport, the Pac-12 has acquitted itself really well. Traditional powers have been sort of up and down. Look at what Alabama's done these past couple weeks. And so teams are going to fall out. And even Georgia looked kind of sluggish in that first half against South Carolina. Michigan has looked a little bit sluggish. Ohio State has looked sluggish. I think it's just one of those years at this point. And you mentioned Washington. Washington has done what almost nobody, if not anybody, has done in the sport, which is irrefutably taken care of business against the quality teams on their schedule every week.
Yeah, I know Oregon fans love to hear how well Washington is doing right now, but this game against Colorado and Prime coming to Eugene, you look at Dan Lanning's short tenured, and I don't think there's been a win that's really grabbed the attention of the nation. They've had some nice wins, but stubbed their toe towards the end of last year when you've got those games against Washington and Oregon State. You don't play in the conference championship game. All eyeballs are going to be on this game. You've seen the viewership numbers for Colorado. How important of a game is this for Lanning and for Oregon, the Oregon brand that used to be the cool brand in college football? Now Colorado is the new hotness on the street. This feels like there's a lot more than just getting one more win in the column this week. This feels like there's a shift that could possibly happen if Oregon gets this win here.
Yeah, potentially. And I think the only thing I would correct you in saying, I still think Oregon has enormous brand value. I think Deion Sanders has enormous brand value because Colorado has been dormant for a long time, and it is he himself specifically who revived it as a cool place to be. But that'll happen anywhere Deion Sanders is, because that's just, when you have that kind of outsized personality, that's what happens. And so they have great players. Obviously, Travis Hunter is going to be out this week and next week at the very least because of the injury he sustained. But no, I think it's important. Anytime you have this many, the number of eyeballs that are going to be on this game, and Oregon has a limited number of home games to host big-time recruits, to finish out their class, that's always going to be an important factor. And to have Oregon on this kind of stage when you do have that sort of topsy-turvy top 10, I think it's enormous because Oregon has a pretty enormous opportunity to make a statement, either by beating them by a ton of points, beating them by a few points. If they're able to show out and win against a quality team like Colorado, I think it goes a long way.
Going to the other side of the ball here with Colorado, again, amazing story, won 11 last year, what Deion has done just to bring the amount of energy and excitement to that program. But we were saying off camera, Dan, they have not played a team nearly as talented as Oregon yet this season. Is this the reality check for Colorado, or what are your honest expectations for this game, considering some of the things you just mentioned with who's in and who's out and the way that this Colorado program has tried to rebuild itself without even one full year underneath Deion?
I think so. I think it'll be a reality check, and I don't think it's any sort of knock on Colorado. Oregon has built up this program for longer and has had quality players in the program in Eugene for longer. I think they have a better quarterback, at least in this moment. I think they have more talent at every position, especially on that Travis Hunter is taking away 2 starters with his injury at corner and receiver. And look, this is a Colorado team that full-on struggled against Colorado State. All due respect to the Rams, it's not Oregon. And they struggled against Colorado State at home. They were down 28-17 in that fourth quarter, and they did what quality teams do, and that's gut out a win with their backs against the wall. But on the road against Oregon, and they have been road tested, and they did win that shootout against TCU, I just think it's a different animal. I think the volume, I think the line of scrimmage is going to be different for Colorado in this game than what they've seen. From what we've all seen watching Oregon games, I think there's a reasonable expectation that this Oregon defensive line is going to absolutely overwhelm Colorado up front. I don't think many people would take exception if you've watched Colorado and watched Oregon. Doesn't mean Oregon's going to win, but I think it is going to be a different bar for what Colorado has seen thus far.
All right, Dan, I know you got to go make some pizzas or something like that. Let everybody know where they can find you at.
Sure. It's the Solid Verbal Podcast, youtube.com/@Solid Verbal. We're live Wednesdays, previewing games, Saturday night at midnight Eastern, 9 Pacific, recapping and reacting to all of the games. And I don't know, come through. I'm an Oregon alum, and I have lots of Duck emotions every week. So come hang out.
Yeah, especially the post-game comments. That's my favorite.
Yes.
When you can tune in live after the game. So, hey, Dan, thanks again, man. Great catching up with you. Save me a slice. I'll be to Chicago at some point later next week, and we'll catch up with you soon, all right?
My pleasure.
All right, stick around. Plenty more Talkin Ducks when we come back. We'll get to our predictions and also let you know the biggest key to the game between Oregon and Colorado. You're watching Talkin Ducks, built by Par Lumber. Welcome back. Time now for Made of Metal, brought to you by Leatherman. Here is Bo Nix. His thoughts on this matchup against Colorado.
Well, we just go to work and we let that noise stay outside, and we let it kind of, we let the fans and everybody else outside of the program, handle all the noise, and we just go to work and we want to do whatever we can to be prepared for the game and, handle our preparation going into the game so that we can be prepared for the game and we can go out and play fast, and we're ready for the moment. And with games like these, the build-up is always big, and a lot of us have played in big games. They've played in big games, so it's going to be a high intense game once we get out on the field. But I expect it to settle down as the game goes and just be football again.
Well, Joey, it feels like Bo Nix is exactly the quarterback you want in a game like this. There's going to be hype. There's going to be talk about what this means. But it feels like this is a game that Bo is going to get up, kiss his wife on the cheek, head out the door, say, honey, I'm going to go to work, have a very efficient game, and come back home and just take care of business and do this without getting caught up in the emotions of the game or getting too high. You look at Bo Nix, what's needed from him? How do you utilize him against Colorado in this very, very exciting matchup where a lot of people are going to be tuning in?
Well, first of all, you forgot the lunch pail, right? You got that. That's
yes,
the whole
with the peanut butter and jelly.
You wake up, you kiss your wife, you grab your lunch pail, you go to work, and then you come back. What do you need from him? You need exactly what he's given you for the last year and a quarter. I mean, no interceptions so far this season, 1 sack. Like we talked about Shedeur Sanders and his decision making. Bo's has been just as good, but he hasn't been put in those situations where he's needed to create magic. He hasn't been under pressure like Shedeur Sanders has been. He is surrounded by 3 running backs and an offensive line who can produce a fantastic running game, right? For Bo, the key is just to continue to facilitate in the way that he has. Make good decisions, get the right person the ball at the right time. When you got a shot, take it. The one thing I will say, and we've had these conversations a couple times, like you find something to nitpick on because, well, there's not really, anything else. He's missed a couple deep balls this year. He's missed a couple deep throws to that Troy Franklin that you just want him to bring it back another yard or two. Those are the type of balls he's going to have to hit. Take your shots when you have it, but I have to imagine that Bo's the type of guy, like you just said, he's seen it. He's been there. He's been through the bad at Auburn. He's been through some of the good last year with Oregon. It's another game for him. And it's another game where he simply has to go out and do what he's been doing for the last 16 games of his career at Oregon.
You know, Aaron, offensively for Oregon, we've seen them run the ball effectively this year. Last week, we saw Colorado, and Deion even mentioned it, really struggle with a lot of those crossing routes, whether they were shallow or intermediate part of the field. What do you do offensively if you're Oregon? How do you craft a game plan that's going to really punish this Colorado defense potentially?
I attack that run defense. They're giving up 242 a game. Really? I mean, Bo Nix is very good in any situation, but Bo Nix playing off of the running game is elite. And if he's on 2nd and 3, you're screwed. If he's 3rd and 2, you're done. And so I'm just attacking with that running game and just pounding and beating those guys to death because they're going to wear down. And they're not going to be able to get off the field, even on 3rd down, if they are able to, contain the running game a little bit, because Bo is going to convert, especially in 3rd and short, either with his legs or with his arm. So I'm just going to pound them. I'm trying to rush for 300. If this team's giving up 242, you should really get 300 against them and just demoralize that defense and have your way with them.
Anthony, your thoughts on this Oregon offense? I mean, obviously they can run it, they can throw it, and with Colorado, there are a couple holes in that defense. What stood out to you?
Well, looking at the Oregon offense, I love the running game. I really do. I love the 3 running backs who can run the football and also catch the football out of the backfield. And then Bo Nix has a group of receivers to throw to. And, Troy Franklin is the guy who could take the top off the defense. He's the go-to guy, but yet there's some other guys that have a lot of speed underneath. And so, when you're looking at the Buffalo's defense, I think we talked about this in the earlier shows. The Pac-12, they have a bunch of quarterbacks, and they're going to score points. This offense, any offense is going to score points. It comes down to who has the better defense or who can make some stops. If you can get a couple of stops, then you might have a chance. I don't think the Buffaloes can stop Oregon's offense. I really don't, because the guys up front. They couldn't
stop Colorado State's.
What's that?
They couldn't stop Colorado State's.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, every game they're giving up, 30-something points. So you don't want to give up 30-something points against Oregon. So
here's the thing that I see, and Anthony, maybe you can
make it quicker.
help out with this. Like, there's always, from my perspective, plenty of skill position guys out there, right? You can find skill position players at every school. That's why you got what was the wide receiver from Colorado? Holden? I mean, that guy's going to be playing in the NFL, right? You will have skill guys from Fresno. You'll have skill guys from smaller schools. What separates the elite schools from those smaller schools are the guys up front. Those guys in the defensive trenches, the guy on the offensive line. Hogs don't just hogs don't just grow everywhere. Like, you got to go out and find those guys. So Deion's done an incredible job of bringing in a lot of skill position talent, but it's going to take him some time to get those guys in the trenches. And it's why you see him giving up 16 sacks, being last in the country, and giving up 250 on the ground. Like, that is the difference between the Oregon team right now and the Colorado team, in my opinion. Both have great quarterbacks. Both have great skill position. It's going to be up front, and that's going to be the difference.
All right, don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll close up shop, give you our keys to the game and our predictions, Oregon, Colorado. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Talkin Ducks, built by Par Lumber. Welcome back to Talkin Ducks. Oregon, a 21-point favorite at the time of this recording as they get set to host Colorado. And so that obviously means Oregon shouldn't have an issue. But you get to the keys of the game, our predictions. I'll make mine super quick here so I can pretend I'm smart and actually know what I'm talking about sometimes. I think it comes down to the linebacking core. Can you put a spy on Shedeur Sanders? Can you really put a lid on that running game? And then also cover some of the tight ends that had success late in that game for Colorado against Colorado State. Can you protect that middle of the field and bottle up that quarterback? I think it's huge for them. At the end of the day, I think Oregon gets the win in this one. I think 42-21. I think it's 21 points right on the dot, potentially. And with that being said, Aaron Fentress, your turn.
Well, I said I was going to be unbearable, but I'm not. It's not the game I thought I was going to be for a lot of different reasons. I think this is going to be a lot like the UCLA game last year, where it's going to be competitive, but at the end of the day, Oregon's going to win it rather convincingly. I've got it 44-27. You got the superior run game. You got a superior defense. You're going to own this game inside. Shedeur's going to make some plays and make it interesting, but not enough to compensate for what Oregon's going to be able to do offensively. So I got the Ducks winning this rather convincingly.
Joey.
41-24.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think that's where I'm
Any
going.
keys to the game at all, or just?
No, I mean, I think I gave the keys throughout. Like, they're just better up front. Oregon has a better offensive line. They're going to run the football. They're going to protect Bo. Oregon has a better front four. They're going to be able to get pressure on the quarterback who's been sacked more than anybody in the conference, and that's going to be the difference in the game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Anthony, bring us home here, my man.
Oh, yeah. I think Oregon's going to win by 17 plus. Oregon's going to run the football. They're going to control the clock and keep that offense, Buffalo's offense, off the field. They're going to be standing on the sideline. And all those dynamic players can't make plays because there's no opportunities. So Oregon's going to run the football right down their throat. 17, low score, but it may get ugly in the fourth quarter.
All right. Oregon rolling while they cover the spread. Only the degenerates will know on that one. But that'll do it for this edition of Talkin Ducks. A lot of fun. Pac-12 play is here. Undefeated Colorado, undefeated Oregon. Don't forget, you can catch us on the YouTubes and keep leaving those constructive comments, by the way. Aaron feeds off of those as he goes to bed every single night. But for myself, Joey, Aaron, and Anthony, we appreciate your support. We'll see you guys next time on Talkin Ducks.